Honest J. Nowak. Coming at you live. Alright. A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more Honest J. Nowak Graphix. And for this episode in Graphix, I went ahead and picked something different here. Something, of course, that gives us an alternate reality. A possible scenario. What if the Nazis had developed the technology that they needed to win World War II and take over the world, just as Hitler would have planned? Well, you know what? Time to answer that question now by me talking about Wolfenstein: The New Order. idSoft, the same company that has made Doom and Wolfenstein, probably some of the best FPS games in history, had basically given up both of the titles over to Bethesda, which of course is now owned by Microsoft. So Microsoft technically has ownership of both of the franchises. But as far to my knowledge, the newer Doom and Wolfenstein games are amazing. And I will say for sure, I actually played through all 4 of the Wolfenstein ports on the PS4. Wolfenstein: The New Order, Wolfenstein... something out there. It's like a little something that happens before the events of Wolfenstein: The New Order out there. I already forget, even though I had just played it months ago. And then there was Wolfenstein: The New Colossus in 2017. Then finally in 2019, Wolfenstein: Youngblood. Of course, I'll get the chance to talk about the others at some point in time, but for now, let's go ahead and talk about the first ever release in the Wolfenstein series, The New Order, released in 2014. Nice and timely. It was at the same time that other games out there like Alien Isolation and Call of Duty Advanced Warfare were already out. But The New Order basically gives us a whole new pitch, a reboot to the franchise entirely. It still asks that same old question, what would happen if the Nazis won World War II instead of the Americans and other such allies that had managed to prevail because of the invention of the atom bomb for the most part? Well, simply put, this game goes as far to give us so many answers to those questions as possible. You basically play as B.J. Blazkowicz, who is indeed an American warrior fighting for the country that is America. Unfortunately, though, upon doing so, during 1945, there is, of course, a lot of things going on taking place. Lots of technology had come around, including the almighty Panzerschreck. Who, of course, could forget about the creatures in this game as well. A lot of the German technology had already been very, very fulfilling, but the kind of weapons in there were very overwhelming. Canonically speaking, I'm telling you, the creatures in this game as well, the Panzerhuss, pretty much, can't really be sure how to pronounce that correctly. It's like a giant metal carnivorous dog, in a way. A ginormous beast of some sorts. I tell you, those things were rather intimidating to look at. Especially when they come right at you. It sort of reminds me of like a lot of other games where enemies start to charge at you no matter what their size is like. And Ark is also pretty well known for having enemies come at you very fast. And we also can't forget many other games that happened before that, like Jurassic the Hunted. But when you think about The New Order, the storyline really gets exciting pretty darn soon. An accident takes place, and Blazkowicz is unfortunately having to be taken care of at a hospital, as there were shards lodged in PJ's brain. So, as a result, a lot of complications had followed through, including some comas, some memory loss, and some loss of certain motor functions would also take place. But not forever, because it would take an incredible 15 years for Blazkowicz to be able to recover from any of that. And during that time, Blazkowicz had been under the care of Anya, who was basically a European nurse. They both get into a certain relationship that is unlike the most of which. It's almost as the way that, well, Holly Hunter and Nicolas Cage managed to get together on the set of Raising Arizona, or maybe with the likes of, well, plenty of other things. But the thing is that here in the New Order, it pretty much gets crazy real quickly. After the long 15 years had passed, a large amount of German soldiers start coming in. The Nazis start rushing in, trying to kill everybody inside the hospital. But BJ and Anya end up making it out of there alive. After Blazkowicz's full recovery, well, they eventually break out of the hospital and they go over to Anya's house, where BJ meets Anya's parents. And Anya explains, along with the others, that World War II had come to an end in 1945. The year was 1960, apparently. And Blazkowicz had zero belief that the Nazis would easily get the upper hand like that, and that supposedly anybody else would have won. But, of course, there came along the explanation that the Nazis won because of certain technology that the world had never seen before, and as a result, that's how they were able to win the war. They say with the kind of technology that you have, you can turn the tides of wars by any means. And with this sort of scenario in mind, that is a total flipping nightmare. Imagine if someday we actually do get this kind of technology, but yet it's not in our own hands. I tell you, this game really sends out a huge message to everybody out there. Same with all the others in the franchise. But then, of course, the revenge ensues. Blazkowicz ends up becoming the only hope that America will have, and maybe the entire world, to set off on a huge quest, a long journey that would take a long time to basically go as far as possible to win through anything at all. But we also cannot forget that at some point in time, we're also going to be looking to talk about the sequels. But in this particular game itself, we got Blazkowicz, who basically goes in, finds allies, kills tons of Nazis with all sorts of weapons as possible, going through all sorts of restricted areas, barracks, and enemy bases and HQs, and does a lot of infiltration and all-out brawls against the Nazi army entirely. This entire Red Army goes against one person, but Blazkowicz proves to be a one-man army by all means. So overall, I tell you, at least from the times that I've been playing through all of these Wolfenstein games, they've been amazing so far. I guess we only have time before we could probably expect more Wolfenstein titles to show up. Bethesda really knows what they're doing here. They clearly know how to reboot a franchise from the ground up. So I will say that for this first title that we got here, Wolfenstein: The New Order 2014 is a great title. A great way to reboot the series, start off fresh with a whole new look at the storyline that unfolds from day one all the way to a certain point in the present. But then, of course, the game itself ends on a cliffhanger, which, of course, would then be looked at by Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, which continues the story right where it left off. That I will have to talk about later, but until then, if you want to see more get out of my channel, then make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me on social media, and stay on the Hollywood side.